hands from the panelists. You look at me. I didn't think I'd get my computer, but I'm
Come on, Dave.
This is how you advertise.
That's right. All right. Welcome, everyone, to season 4 of the Profit Power Hour, episode 6, How to Exit Without Selling by PMs Who've Done It. This is going to be a good one. I'm very excited. Today with us, we have Melanie Thomas, CEO of RentWorks in San Antonio, Texas, and Dave Sawyer, who has founded a number of property management related businesses, Sawyer Property Management, CAMS, which is a HOA management business, and more recently, Vanica, a association management software business. So I'll let them introduce themselves a bit more here in a minute. My name is Brad Johnson. I am the CEO of Profit Coach and your host of the Profit Power Hour. At Profit Coach, we help property managers expand their entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. And by the way, if you may have noticed this last name and my former employer, I'm taking a bit of a risk here this morning by having my former boss on the Profit Power Hour. We'll see how that goes for me. You can be the judge. But he is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in our space and the person that I probably owe the most credit to for my own professional success. So I'm excited to have Dave here, and it's a privilege to have him here. And as always, you will get a very cute picture of my kids because Danny did it for years, and now I get to do it for years. This guy in the middle to the right, not my child. The other three, those are my sweet kiddos. This was this past weekend. We're having a great time. All right, as always, questions. Drop them in the Q&A box. We will answer them live as we have the ability to. And as we so often do, we are looking for a transformation of our thinking today. We want to help you see clarity through the fog and go from gut-based decision making to data-driven decision making, and ultimately, something that's going to be very relevant today, help you reach your mountaintop, whatever that is for you. And I think that our topic today will go a long way towards helping you achieve your goals. That's our desired, and that's the value that we want to create today. Okay, so how to exit without selling. Let's get into it. First of all, a statistic for you that we found doing a little research. Almost half of PMs are working 40 or more hours a week, and about 10% of them report that they're working 50 plus hours a week. And I would say of the people here in this room, in our total attendee Zoom room, I bet a lot of you live in that 10% of PMs working 50 plus hours a week. So let's talk about how to build a self-managing company that can run without you, or at least to some degree without you, so that you can exit the day today and still hold onto your business. So first thing I want to do, take the temperature of the room. Where are you in your entrepreneurial journey right now? So we're going to put a poll up with 4 choices. Maybe there's more. If you don't feel like you fit in neatly in one of these, just throw it in the chat where you find yourself. But where are you? Are you just getting started? Are you in growth mode? You're scaling door count. You're laying a foundation, but you're not necessarily looking for your exit anytime soon. Are you trying to land the plane? I certainly speak to a lot of PMs who do calls with me who are, hey, I'm trying to land the plane 3 to 5 years. I want to know what that looks like. Or are you in the get me out now? I just got to find a way out of this. Please help me get rid of this company. I don't want to do this anymore. So while you are filling that out, I will let the panelists introduce themselves, and we will let the lady go first here. So Melanie, if you could give the 1-minute intro overview of who you are and what your role is, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Melanie Thomas. I am the CEO of RentWorks in San Antonio, Austin. San Austin area is what we like to say. I've been with RentWorks for almost 9.5 years now. I had the honor and challenge of helping our founder, Brad Larson, step out of the day-to-day. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing at first. Think system, structure, occasional stubborn moments on both sides. But I feel like we built the right team. We got really serious about processes, and now I'm running the business remotely while he focuses on other fun things. And I'm excited to share what that transition really looked like, the good, the hard, and the lessons learned.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Dave, over to you.
Yeah, first of all, Brad, thanks for inviting me to participate in this. I love that you're playing such an active role in thought leadership in this industry. So kudos to you. My name is Dave Sawyer again. I worked building real estate services businesses for roughly 25 years. So both brokerage and property management essentially. So I had the opportunity to build businesses for roughly 25 years. And as Brad mentioned, almost 10 years ago, I started building a community association management operating system through a company that's now called Vanica. So I've spent a lot of time in this industry. Brad, as you identified, you were part of my, not only, initially you were part of my scale plan, so helping me scale the business to pursue bigger and bigger opportunities. And then ultimately you helped me exit out of the business. I know that's not the main topic, but anyways, so I sold the company in 2023.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Yes, and we'll get into both of those stories because I think the stories, how they happened, why they happened, who kind of helped make them happen is going to be really instructive today. So, all right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. All right, so here's where we're at. We've got a few people just getting started. We've got one poor soul who wants to get out right now. And as I suspected, most of you are somewhere in the middle. Half of the remaining respondents, about half of you, growth mode, not thinking exit, but want to make sure you're laying the right foundation. Other half of you trying to land the plane, land it well. Hopefully today will be really valuable for all of the above. Okay, are you ready? Let's get into it. Here's our agenda for the day. So, two main topics: strategic vision, strategy and vision, and leadership team. And what does it look like to build, deploy, identify a leadership team? And how we'll break that out is how to stop being the operator and training your successor. And what does it really look like to exit without selling from an infrastructure system kind of environment standpoint? Okay, so we'll start with strategic vision, which I would identify as the owner's first and most critical role to the process of exiting without selling. Vision answers two questions: where are we going and how will we get there? So I use the analogy of building a ship. So the owner of the company is like a person who commissions a ship to be built. They set the destination. They say, this is the purpose of the ship, what we need to do with the ship. The team builds the ship to get there. If you don't know where you're supposed to go, you don't know what type of ship to build. Very common problem in property management. I started a business, or I backed my way into a business, or I bought a PM business, and I just want to grow it. Well, what does that mean? And for what purpose, to what end, why? So, defining your North Star. Okay, that's core values and customer experience. I'm going to give just a few actually, no, before I do that, I want to get our panelists involved before I kind of give a little bit more on my take on that. I want to start with Melanie and ask, from this vision standpoint, what was the strategic vision put forward at Rentworks, either by you or by Brad or somebody else, that facilitated that transition from him to you? What did that look like from a vision standpoint? How did we get to this place?
Well, I came in when Brad had already had some, mission and mission statement and core values kind of built in. And as we decided that I was taking over, we realized, okay, we probably need to reset them. So we got in with an EOS implementer. And so that really helped drive home the importance of that. And so we did the whole 2-day drill where we battleground it out. There was a bunch of folks involved, our management team, and we really got in a room and just tried to figure out, what it really meant, what we wanted the business to look like. So it was a team effort. And like I said, EOS really drove that home for us. So it was a group effort. And again, just rebuilding where Brad started and me taking over, and what that vision would look like is what we worked on. And that EOS again was the foundation that really helped us get off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then Dave, you've scaled, exited, and you've exited without selling, and then eventually exited by selling multiple successful services business. So walk us through the strategy of that and how sort of your vision for those businesses played a role in your ability to do that.
Yeah. And let me take maybe a couple minutes just to kind of give my version of the entrepreneurial journey, if you will.
Please.
I think every entrepreneur or founder decides to take a bet on themselves, right? And they decide, I think I can navigate life better on my own, and maybe I know some things uniquely that the rest of the world doesn't know, and I'm going to go out and try to make a living doing those things that I understand. So you start your business and you basically, you're the only one and you do everything. And so over time you start to add additional people if you're successful, and you start to grow your business. I think one of the fallacies that entrepreneurs kind of become really embrace and becomes part of their value is that they are the center of the universe, that everything in the business is dependent on their involvement, right? So whether it's dealing with the toughest customers, or whether it's closing the biggest deals, or whether it's dealing with people issues, or whatever it is, you kind of you create this kind of fallacy that you are the best equipped person to do that. And so most businesses get constrained with that thinking, right? They one person can only handle so much responsibility, and then you reach kind of the peak of your powers, and then that's where the business may, or more than likely caps out. I had gotten to that place, and so I appreciated that I could only handle so much. And I started to ask myself, introspectively, what do I need to do to change to become no longer the bottleneck? Great phrase. And so what do I need to evolve myself? And so I started to do some, kind of internal thinking and questioning, what do I love about this business? What do I love to spend all my time doing? And what are the things that I'll do? And I'll do them because I have to do them, but I don't have a massive amount of passion or energy around them. And if somebody were willing to do it for me or even do it better than me, I would easily let go of that. So I think that realization early in my career was, I recognized if I was going to grow a business, I was going to have to really live in my lane and find other really smart people to live in their lane. So once I understood that, one of the things I love, and what I define as my unique ability, is I love to start businesses. I love to kind of solve unique challenges. And then I like to maybe put the scaffolding in place to build the business. So get the right people, get the right processes, get the right operating system in place, and then turn over the responsibility to really good operators to lead the business and go from there. So anyways, that's what I did. So, and because I was involved in multiple businesses at the same time, I obviously had to manage my own personal limitations. Like Melanie, we thankfully came across EOS ourselves. I discovered that back in the 2017-18 timeframe, and we became real disciples of EOS. And so to your question about the vision, that was probably more when I started to think to myself, I should not be the operator of the business. I should be the visionary. I should think about where I want to take the business, but I don't think I'm built to necessarily be the best operator of the business. And so that's when I started to rethink our organizational needs from a people and talent standpoint.
Yeah, that's really good. Betsy just asked in here, what is EOS? So
Uh,
entrepreneurial operating system. There's Sam. Dave, why don't you answer that? You're even more
Yeah,
familiar.
so there's this guy named Gino Wickman, and I'll just tell the quick story. Gino Wickman took over his dad's real estate brokerage training program, and his dad was a massively successful individual performer in training people to be great real estate brokers. And Gino Wickman came in as a young man and discovered that the business was completely out of control, disorganized, not necessarily focused on the right things, and ultimately not capable of being able to transition from his father to his son or to any other potential people. So Gino, after suffering through that experience for a couple of years, really took a step back and asked himself, what are the core needs of a business? And he identified kind of six, and I won't go into an EOS sales pitch, but he identified six foundational concepts that businesses need to be really, really good at. And from that, then he built what's called the EOS. I call it an accountability system. For the plug, there's two books that are really important to read. One is called Traction. So you can go to Amazon and look up Traction. And the other book is called Get a Grip. For you entrepreneurs, founders out there, Get a Grip is kind of, you'll connect to the emotional. It's a fable, and it's a story about a woman who's trying to run a business, and she's struggling mightily to do that well. And she encounters, in essence, a consultant or a guru who helps her through using EOS, kind of get her life in control and build a successful company.
Yeah, yeah, that's really helpful. And the unique ability concept comes from Strategic Coach. It's also very influential for Dave, influential for me as well. And maybe this is a good place to just mention understanding your unique ability and what you are uniquely gifted at and where you have the ability to do things better than most or better than anybody is such a big part of the entrepreneurial journey. Dave, you mentioned that your unique ability is to start businesses, build the scaffolding, and hand them off. I've realized, at least to this point in my career, my unique ability is to be the next person after you. I'm not a founder, I'm not a starter at Sawyer or at Profit Coach. I take existing good businesses, make them better, make them more profitable, optimize them. So I'm learning that about myself. Doesn't mean I wouldn't start a company someday, and doesn't mean that people who are starters wouldn't necessarily run a great company into the future, but we're not all great at everything. And so identifying where you're great is a big deal and a big part of the journey.
And I think once that's good. And I think once you kind of figure out what you're good at, you can start to then, and that's kind of the exit motion, or I call it the scaling motion before exit, which is what do I need to add to my team that complements the things I do not have unique ability around, so that, so Brad and I work together. So it was kind of a perfect marriage because I wanted to spend time thinking about the future of the company, vision, whatever. And Brad really was excited about actually operating the business and optimizing the performance of the business, wringing out more profit and driving more growth and stuff like that. So those are the kinds of concepts you want to start thinking about as you're scaling the business first and foremost. And then that ultimately will lead you to the opportunity to potentially exit.
Yeah. Yep. That's really helpful. So vision, where are we going? How will we get there? I've broken this down into three core areas. These concepts aren't unique to me. These are some mishmash of Strategic Coach and EOS and my influences. Defining your North Star, starting with core values and customer experience. I'll also just give you the Profit Coach example here, just so you can see kind of what this looks like in real life. For us, it's core values: think abundantly, own the outcome, be courageous, leverage your talents, and adept communication. Those things guide our company every day, all the decisions that we make. And then the experience: what do we want our customers to experience? Three things: we owned the outcome. There's an ease of doing business with us. Did I make it easy? And then extraordinary service. Did they say wow in the process, or did they just receive precisely what they paid for? We're looking to be above a transactional approach. And then your company's purpose. So those core values and that experience ties into what are the goals of the business? What's the achievable goal of the business? And then what's the mission that kind of sits above all of that? And if you've been on any of our Profit Power Hours, this won't be new to you, but our mission is BAM. We call it BAM: help people become and achieve more than they thought possible. And then how do we do that? Well, it looks like a lot of relentless good execution on clear and achievable goals. I'll show you in a second how we approach those. And then finally, communicate and ensure adoption. If you have a clear vision and you have clear core values, but your team doesn't know them and your team doesn't live them, they're really not all that good, and they certainly won't help you exit without selling. So you have to make sure that your team understands and takes ownership of the vision, ownership of the goals as well. So for us, on Mondays, we do self-reporting scorecards. So everybody has to report on their numbers. And then on Fridays, we do win sharing from the week and we do some core value spotlight. This is how people at Profit Coach are exemplifying the core values. And then we bring together everybody once a year. This is one of our rhythms for our retreat. It just happened to be a couple weeks ago. So we've got some fun pictures of us from our retreat. But that's not just so we can have fun and rest. That's so that we can come and make sure that we are super clear on who we are, who we want to be, and where we're going. So if those elements are not in place at your business, I would really consider going through the exercise. Reading traction will basically take you through the exercise of developing these sort of things and getting an implementer. You don't have to have one, but it can be really helpful to have an implementer to walk you through all of that. But EOS itself will handle a lot of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead, Melanie.
No, I was just gonna same thing. I was just gonna say the EOS, the cadence of the meetings, like the repetitiveness. The more you talk about your core values and the mission statement, the more I feel like your team buys in. So EOS says that meeting cadence. If you're bringing that up with your team, like it's gonna stick. I read somewhere you have to tell somebody 20 times or something crazy for them to remember. So, if you're feeling like, God, I say this all the time, you probably still need to say it 10, 20 more times for it to stick. So just keep that in mind. It's not something that happens overnight. It's every day. I said the EOS, the cadence of those meetings, very deliberately making sure that you're mentioning it. I would like to plug in, there's a software called Nectar. That's an employee rewarding system that ties points to core values. So it really helps your employees remember the core values. And so, the team gets a certain amount of points every week. And this works great for RTMs too, because they can use them in Mexico or different regions. So it helps my employees remember the core values, because in order to give out those points and give a shout out, you have to hashtag core value. So that's just something, again, it's a win-win for the team and for management. It really helps drive home and helps the team remember those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that recommendation. It was called Nectar, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. And yeah, not the mattress company, but different one. Okay, so before we move on, throw another poll up here. Katie, if you could do that. So do you feel like your team has clarity on your long-term goals and what success looks like for the business? An answer here, I'm not even sure that I know what I want. I'm not even sure that I have clarity, or some degree of yes to no on they understand and they have clarity on what success looks like, what the long-term goals are for the business. I make this point a lot of other folks in our industry make this point a lot, and I'm really grateful for this chorus. But success does not look the same for every property management entrepreneur. You don't have to have 1,000 doors to be a successful PM company. You can be successful, you can be profitable, you can live an awesome life at 200, 300, 400, 500 doors. What do you want is the question. And so making sure that you have clarity on that and your team has clarity on that, super important. So I'm going to let the poll go for here for a second. I'll throw this out there. This is something we've developed in the past. I think it's a really helpful, quick framework on what does a self-managing PM business look like. 3 things. Everyone plays the game. And this is so important to getting yourself out of the day-to-day. If everyone isn't playing the game, and might I add, if everyone isn't incentivized to play the game, then you will continue to be the bottleneck. Everyone plays in community. So there's camaraderie, there's accountability, there's best practice sharing amongst the team. There's maybe an element of competitiveness, but only towards a common goal. And then every position has a scoreboard. Every person, every department has to be able to keep score. Am I winning? Am I losing today, this week, this month, this year? There are softwares out there that you can use for that, or you can just use spreadsheets, but everybody should have a number of some kind. So,
hey Brad, can I expand on that for a second? Because you're referencing a concept that we talked a lot about called self-managing. So one of the things we've talked about, just to kind of differentiate the types of businesses and where they're at, is I believe there's kind of 3 phases of a business journey. There's the first, 4 stages. There's the survival stage, which is just purely gritting out your ability to sustain yourself. Then there's probably the lifestyle stage, which is where a lot of founder entrepreneurs get to. And it's kind of like, hey, this business gives me the freedom to take a trip when I want to, or buy a car every year, or, work the hours I want to work or whatever it is. And I'm pretty happy with this lifestyle business. And a lot of people will get pretty comfortable being in a lifestyle kind of mode. And then the next kind of version is what's called self-managed that Brad keeps referring to. And a self-managed business is where you basically have all your folks engaged in the success of the company. They know what their individual role is. They know what their metrics are that they're performing against. They get compensated based on their own individual success and contribution to the business. So it's a much more engaged, self-managed type of concept. And then probably the most evolved stage would be self-growing business or self-expanding. Self-expanding meaning people are not only responsible for their own portion of the business or their own role, but they're actually actively trying to help grow the business in meaningful ways. So whatever that might mean within your company, self-expanding is a big deal. But I think it's cool to think about these concepts and maybe where you fit in the definitions and then where you might like to get to.
Yeah, yeah, that's really, really helpful. Thank you for that. So I'll throw our poll results here on the screen. So do you feel like your team has clarity on your long-term goals and what success looks like? So about half of folks are saying somewhat. There's some degree of clarity here. And then kind of mixed through, yes, for sure, definitely not, and 5 people, I'm not even sure I know. So hopefully even that framework that Dave just put out might help you understand, well, from a really high level, what do you want? Do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want that where you work in the business and that's just the way it is until you get to the end? Or do you want something that can run without you? Or do you want to build more of a scaled enterprise that can grow and expand without your involvement? So good place to start right there. All right. Moving on to our second topic, A players, building the right leadership team. So I would like to open up the chat for this one. So let's build the A player anatomy together. What does an A player look like? Are they born A players? Are they made? Are they hired? Are they coached? What are some of the characteristics that describe the sort of people that must be on your team in order to get you to that place where you're not in the nitty gritty of the business every day? Jeremiah says, not made, but can be killed. That's hilarious. Growth oriented, Bradley Cotton, A players never hide, always looking for more, consistent top performer. Dave, Melanie, how would you guys describe A players that you've hired or trained? What do they look like? What are you looking for?
For sure, self-starter. Somebody that can, solve problems, problem solvers. I will say, well, some of my best A players don't ask permission, they ask forgiveness. They make a decision with the facts that they know, and I'll back them 100%. So I'd like that, a decision maker, somebody who can make a decision with the information they have, and I'll back them every time. It's the person who can't make the decision that I'm like,
So decisive.
yes, 100%.
Decisive. Dave, how about for you?
I'll add. I think curious. I think people that are curious tend to ask a lot of questions and want to learn as much as they can about a particular subject, which will then help inform them on, becoming more of an expert in their own right. So I love people that are very, very curious. I also look for people that are gritty, and I know that's a little bit difficult, but I want to know in their life when they've had experiences that were super challenging, and maybe they failed at those experiences, or maybe they barely survived them. But they introspectively learned a lot about themselves and kind of developed some ability to kind of navigate through those tougher moments. So those would be important to me.
I would also like to add in, someone that brings solutions, not just problems. Somebody who comes to you with, hey, I need help. This is what I think. What are your thoughts? Not just, hey, here's my problem, solve it for me. So that's a big one for me too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. I'll read a couple other of these. Karen says, coached. Christian, skills can be taught. Giving a hoot is much harder to find and better to optimize.
I
That's
love
for
that.
sure.
It's so true.
I mean, just
Have to care.
somebody who cares. Somebody who cares. Batteries included. I like that. Has the drive to naturally to excel and constant improving, constant performing. Those are definitely good phrases to describe that. So I'll put a few out here as well, kind of that I thought through. Just contrasting A players versus B and C players, and a little bit of a framework for thinking through that. Um, the truth is that for most entrepreneurs, low performers and inexperienced players take up most of your time. Whereas if you were, and I mean, all of us fall into this. I know people who do this well, nobody does it perfectly. But in an ideal world, our best people would get the most of our time rather than our lowest performers getting most of our attention. But hopefully this will be a good place to maybe start to bucket some people and understand who you have around you. A players, the potential is high and the performance is high, and super key, they need a consistent challenge. Um, an A player gets bored if they're not being pushed. And I've seen this before. And if they're actually an A player and they're not getting pushed, they will leave because they have this intrinsic desire to be pushed, and they'll go somewhere else where they can find that push because they want to grow, they want to get better, they don't just want to do a job. B players, competent and steady performers, but they stagnate pretty quickly. Obviously, you need some degree of that steadiness and that competence, and that, yes, I will do my job and do it really well sort of attitude amongst your team. C players, usually promoted beyond competence, often unmotivated. So this is a cool framework for this. And it's like the known unknowns, known knowns kind of quadrants here, but unconscious incompetence, teacher weed out. They don't even know what they don't know. That is a place where you have to pretty quickly take action to see if that is going to start to get fixed or if that just needs to be separated. That person needs to be separated from the business. Conscious incompetence, they know what they don't know. They need training. Conscious competence, they know what they know, but they need to be coached. They need to be pushed. And then unconscious competence. This is a great place to be for one of your team members to be, which is they don't even know how good they are, but they could be even better. And there's so much more that you could do with them. They need mentorship, and they also, of course, need coaching. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. How do you find them, and how do you develop them? So I'll start here with Melanie. So you've been CEO at Rentworks now for a while, and I'm sure that so obviously Brad brought you in, and now you are bringing others in to build up talent around yourself as well. So what has been your personal cadence or structure for finding and developing leaders?
Well, production, right? The numbers were very KPI driven, with Lead Simple and your team helping us out. Profit Coach, shout out. We are very KPI driven. So the numbers tell, and then the, staff members saying, this person's doing well. Again, we have the leadership meetings and we're talking about the performance of new folks and who we could potentially identify, again, based on production and feedback that we're getting from clients and customers, and really try and give them like stretch opportunities, or leading projects, maybe mentoring new team members to kind of give them a little bit more responsibility and kind of push them forward. I know we have a really good performing property manager now who with our local board, pushed her into a leadership program. So I think it's just very deliberate. When we say finding people, I like to look at the data, right? Are they performing what the expectations of the job are? Well, better than average, and what is the feedback we're getting with the people that they're interacting with? So those are the two main things that I look at.
Yeah, that's good. Dave, how about for you?
I think there's a combination. Opportunistically, I'm always curious when I meet people and get to know them, no matter where they might be, just to see if there's some potential in the future for us to do something together. So I'm always just meeting people and talking to them and wanting to, for my own selfish interest, wondering if this could be somebody that could be really impactful in something I'm involved with. So that's one side. And by the way, at our software company today, because you're trying to grow so fast that you can't perfectly predict all the roles you're going to need, but you can perfectly predict that you're going to need really talented people to lead those roles. So you kind of want to continually be on the lookout.
So
So that's
recruiting,
one
wearing your
grouping.
recruiting hat.
Yeah, exactly. So you're always, yeah. So that's a great way to say it, Melanie. So you're always recruiting. I would suggest you're always recruiting. And then the second part is just the tried and true methods of going after folks through LinkedIn or what have you. I will say two kind of X factor considerations for me is, and Brad knows this, I'm a big fan of behavioral profiling. So, almost everything everyone listed for qualities of A players was behavioral. There was no, they were a property manager for 20 years and they learned how to manage 50 properties and they understand how to sign a lease. It's all behavioral attitude things. So I'm a big fan of behaviorally assessing people, and there's different tools you can use to do that, because I do believe most of us are made to behave in a certain environment a certain way. And if you can obviously find people that are predisposed for that environment, you're much better off than having someone who's completely, not misaligned with that. So anyways, I believe in behavioral profiling. And then I also, on reading people's resumes, I want to know more about what, if they understood what was the performance requirements for the roles they were in and how they could articulate how they performed, what impact they made on their organization or company to drive certain results. Like Melanie was talking about KPIs. Most people, if you kind of simplify their resumes, I went to work, I did things for 8 hours a day, and that was as good as it got. Most people, that's kind of how their resume is simplified. Very unique people will sit and go, I was hired to go out and do this, measurement wise. I did it, and this is how I did it, and I understand perfectly how to do it again. That to me is unique, and that's how I sift through people's resumes just to kind of get to the people that I think could be X factor employees.
Yeah, I would describe that as outcome and impact-based thinking rather than compliance and task-based
Good,
thinking.
good.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
that's absolutely something that we look for. I mean, if we do an interview with someone and they're just like, yeah, I do this, this, and this, and I can do it well, that's a big, not a big, but that's a pretty big yellow flag for us versus, I understand where I sit in the value chain. I understand the value that I create, the people that it impacts, the difference it makes, and how that actually is growing the company. I know how I fit in the business.
Excellent. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree
I
with you.
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is a good topic or a good time to bring up we're talking about the personality testing is culture index. So I use culture index to really I used to spend so much time weeding through resumes. And now, we build out that C job in there and I'm only looking at about maybe 15 to 20% of the resumes that actually come in, because if they're not a good culture fit, I'm not even looking at the resume. They could have all the, experience in the world, but if you're not going to fit with the culture fit in that C job, I'm not even looking at you. So that software again, it's helping me save a lot of time. And then even with my existing staff, how are they leadership? Is it innately in them? How do they like to be coached? I mean, it gives us a wealth of information and helping identify who we could potentially bring up, or if they even have those attributes that we need for those positions. So Culture Index, I love it. It was a game changer for us.
right.
It's good. Dave, what do you use?
Ours is a version of Culture Index. So the guy that wrote Culture Index a long time ago, which was kind of the foundational predictive analysis stuff, which it's a little nerdy. But anyways, the guy that wrote it left the business for whatever reason, and he created his own a newer version called OMS, Organizational Management Systems. It's very small. It's very curated for his kind of situation. So I don't know that I'd promote it per se. Culture Index to me is easier to understand and administrate for your businesses. So I probably would lean on Culture Index as a primary option.
They have a cool portal, keeps it all together for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. We've also used Colby. The Colby Index is a good one as well. And I'm trying to think if we've
Print.
used Print. Yeah, Print Profile, especially for leaders.
Never
That was
heard of
actually one of. Have you heard of Print, Melanie?
Mm-mm.
Print was the most eye-opening experience I had when working for Dave, because what Print did was it told me who I could be at my best, and it said this is who you will be and who you might be at your worst. it's kind of like the dark side, the light side and the dark side
The
of my
angel and the
personality.
devil.
Oh, and
So
it was so interesting because
I think to clarify that, Brad, if you take strength finders and let's just take one of your top 5 strength finders is you're competitive, just say you're competitive. So in print, it'll identify, you're typically a competitive person. What's the shadow
a
of
shadow, that's
being
it, not dark
competitive?
side, shadow.
Or what's the dark side or the shadow side? I'm a bad loser. I'm an idiot when I lose. And you need to know that because there's going to be times where things aren't going to work out perfectly. And how badly do what kind of problems do you create in that moment? So all that stuff is good, but those are great ones. Print's good, Colby's good.
I had that
Strength
same
finders is
question.
interesting.
Oh, print. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, print profile. And I viscerally identified with it immediately. I was like, yes,
Yes,
that
that's
is
how I
me.
felt with
That's
Culture
me at
Index
my
when I got
worst.
my survey results. I was like, this is totally me. I'm a tech expert for those of you guys who know. I'm like, this is me. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it helped me identify where I most need to improve. And one of the things that it did, this will be the last thing and then I'll move on, is yeah, is
Twins.
it gave me a list of my triggers. It was basically like, here's you at your best. Here's the shadow version of you. Here are the things that kind of trigger Shadow Brad. And Shadow Brad, because I am so much of a alpha competitive, have to win, like Alpha Brad is not a great guy to be around. It's not somebody that you want to work for. And so and Dave lovingly, in the way that only he can, kind of showed that to me through this exercise. So triggers and shadow, it's really helpful. Okay. Um, Two things I'll add. The two things that I think you need to give to your leaders the most. Agency. So agency is when leaders feel empowered, trusted, and accountable for delivering on their piece of the mission. When I talk to PM company owners who have tried the self-managing route and it is either failed or succeeded, this is usually the dividing line. And Dave exemplifies this. I think Brad Larson exemplifies this really well. Owners who give that leader, especially if it's the COO, director of ops, president, the second in command, the second chair, agency to make their own mistakes and to take the business, after receiving a vision, take the business in the direction where they think the business needs to go and allow them to be accountable for their actions rather than control them is often the difference between this experiment succeeding or failing. So agency is huge, and then role clarity. People can't take ownership if they don't know what they own. So the first question is, who am I? And then the second question is, what am I responsible for? Any comments from you guys on that agency role clarity? How have you seen that play out in your businesses?
I think you put your finger on it. If you want to be consumed with all the minutia and all the gnat's ass details of the business, don't give anyone agency. Like force them to come to you for everything that goes on, and you can just be consumed with that. People have to learn, so they have to have the right to make their own decisions, experience the results of those decisions, and then recover from them if they weren't the right decisions, right? And only by giving them the empowerment to do that will they go through that journey. And then at the end of the day, you're going to create a bunch of much more capable people that's going to give your business that much more potential. But you can easily take that away from them, or compromise people if you don't give them the freedom to make decisions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we get into our final topic of the day, want to throw this out here for everyone. So I helped Dave exit the day-to-day in one of his businesses, and now in my role at Profit Coach, it's part of why I went to Profit Coach is that's what we do here. That's what I help PM company owners and operators do, on a daily basis. So if that's something that interests you, if you'd like to talk more about that, I'd love to have a one-on-one session with you. I've done this for Dave and would love to be able to help you do this as well at Profit Coach. This is the core of what we do is help property management company owners build highly profitable self-managing companies. So what that will look like is I'll help you get clarity on the revenue, the doors, the profit you need to make it happen. Let's look at the data, see where you are, get clarity on your goals and your vision, and see what has to be true to get from here to there. Help you identify where you're holding too many responsibilities. Maybe there's some unique abilities that you have that you want to hold on to, but what is it that you are not excellent at that you need to hire or develop talent around you to take? And then finally, how to let go without compromising your commitment to your clients. How can you be sure and get some degree of confidence that if you were to step back, the commitment to the clients would remain? So we have a poll up here. You can respond to that, and we'll reach out to you, or that QR code goes straight to my meeting calendar, and you can get directly on my calendar. Have a good bit of availability now that conference season has calmed down, at least for a couple months. So happy to do that with you. Obviously, it's totally free, and would love to just do a consultation with you and see where you're at and see if there's any way that we can help you. Okay, last topic, supporting your team. And we've talked some about this. This has kind of been woven throughout the conversation, which is great. But how do you build the infrastructure that your team needs to succeed? There's a few things here. There's intrinsic motivation when they understand core purpose, feel ownership, feel like they have a good understanding of what needs to be true. And then support, providing the tools, structure, rhythms that allow leaders to thrive. That can be software, that can be systems, etc. And then feedback loops, self-reporting rhythms and structure times for two-way feedback. One concept that we talk about a good bit at Profit Coach is psychological safety. Are you creating this sort of environment where people feel like they can be honest about their business and about their performance? So I'll start with that, with the environment question. How do you create an environment where feedback is expected and embraced? I'll open it up. I won't force it on either of you to start, but for either of our panelists, how do you create that environment?
Yeah, so I just think open communication, again, like picking an operating system and getting everybody's buy-in. Again, setting those expectations for the meeting cadences and sticking to them. I think oftentimes I hear a lot of folks that start something and then it kind of tapers off and they start strong with the meetings and it kind of trails off and they wonder why or what happened. Well, that's why it's the consistency. I think that wins out here. So I hate to keep saying EOS, but EOS is great. Any operating system is really going to help to get what you need nailed down and in person.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's a combination of things. I think first and foremost, you have to use data, or you have to, use facts to actually guide your conversations. People don't take well to emotional conversations that aren't fact-based. So, and I think that's a training area for each of us, is to kind of learn how to be really good at giving the right feedback to get the right kind of response back. And then I think you have to train your organization to kind of operate similarly. And to Melanie's point, and we did use DOS, so this is probably going to sound always, kind of repetitive, but we had a quarterly feedback process, right? So we gave quarterly feedback to everyone on our team, focused around what were the rocks that they were responsible for, what are their metrics, what are their scorecard metrics, how did they do, how did they perform, what opportunities are there for improvement in the next quarter. And then you have this kind of compounding flywheel of doing that stuff. So getting people into the habit of having those conversations and being, focusing on the right topics is a really valuable thing. And then it's not friction, it's not full of friction. It's actually a very empowering, enabling, experience.
Yeah, and doubling down
Yeah,
again on
go
the
ahead.
culture index, guys, when we're resurveying our staff every 6 months or so, we're also getting data with that on how they're feeling with their workload and stuff. And it helps us to kind of coach them in a way that it's beneficial for them specifically. So circling up on that.
Good.
Yeah, it's really good. Two rhythms that we use. Well, I'll give three real quick. So we do a quarterly survey, which is a pretty extensive survey where we send it out to all of our team members. We make sure that they actually fill it out, and ask those sort of questions. What's working? What's not working? What's one thing you would change? How clear are you on the goals and objectives for you and your understanding of how you fit in the business? And then we do a weekly office vibe survey, which I think is a really good resource. I know Todd's on here. I know Todd uses Office Vibe recently, went public with his Office Vibe number. Not to brag or anything, but it was pretty high. Um, so weekly Office Vibe, quarterly survey. Yeah, there it is. And the last one is something that I've learned from Jordan Muela of Lead Simple, which is the CCR framework. So that is complaint, context, and request. So, oh, no, excuse me. Complaint, contribution, request. So complaint. What am I complaining about? What problem am I here to raise? Contribution. How have I contributed to the problem? How much of this is my fault and what part of this do I need to own? So starting with that rather than, hey, can you fix my problem? But here's how I've contributed to the problem. And then request, here's what I'm looking for specifically in order to resolve this complaint. He's got like a 7 or 8 minute video on that framework. It's really, really helpful. So the CCR framework is one that we use, especially when it can be very hard for direct reports to bring these sort of requests and bring this sort of something's not right, I'm frustrated up to their manager. Giving them a framework that's widely adopted and accepted and giving them permission to do this is really helpful. It takes some of the scariness out of making that, out of starting that conversation. If there's this agreed upon framework in order to be able to receive that. Yeah, Betsy, I'll throw that link in the chat in just a second. I think if you Google CCR framework, Jordan Muela, you'll probably get it as well. But it's really good. It's like 7 or 8 minutes. So yeah, those are good examples of how to create that environment. And then kind of wrapping up here, we've talked about EOS, talked about culture index, infrastructure wise, systems, tools. What of those that haven't been mentioned, if there are any, change the game for your team, your leadership team in particular?
Brad, one of the things, I think we did this when you were with the company, but anyways, I was a big fan of a woman named Cy Wakeman, and Cy Wakeman wrote a book called Reality-Based Leadership. She wrote 2 books, actually, one called No Ego and one called Reality-Based Leadership. And I think we've trained all the leaders and all the businesses through the years on how to understand reality-based leadership. And so that was a very helpful tool to developing our leaders to be effective with their communications, their feedback, kind of sifting out the drama from the reality and stuff like that.
Yeah. I was throwing this in the chat just so people see it. If that is particularly true, if you have drama on your team, if you are constantly dealing with drama, chit chat, etc., I would say that yes, there's a healthy level of disagreement that probably is present on great teams. But if you're constantly in the he said, she said drama world, that is a pretty decent sign of an unhealthy team. And reality-based leadership, again, provides some of the language and the framework to be able to have those conversations in a way that everybody can agree on so it doesn't feel like an attack. That was what was part of what was really helpful about that resource.
Yeah. Her last name is Wakeman.
Yeah, it's
Wakeman.
Yeah, Cy Wakeman. Melanie, how about for you? Any other additional systems, tools that have changed the game for your leadership team? How do you guys manage your work at RentWorks?
So Lead Simple, I would say is a can't live without. And here recently, I'm starting to dip my toe in Notion, and that is very quickly becoming I won't be able to live without it very soon. So, I'm very new to the game, but I'm loving it. And it's going to be a can't live without.
Yeah, that's really good. So Notion, Lead Simple, having a workflow software, and some of these tools like EOS, obviously the culture index, predictive index, those sort of things, great tools for leaders. So, all right, we are at 1:54 Eastern here. So let's throw this in chat. What is one thing you're taking away from this Profit Power Hour that you're going to investigate or implement into your business? I've started asking this question to myself after webinars, after conferences, You come away with maybe 20 ideas, but you can only do one thing at a time if you want to really do it well. So what's your one thing where you're like, I need to go learn more about this, take a look at this? Sherry says EOS. Jeremiah says calling Brad back. That's funny. Sherry also says appointment with Brad. Thank you. Looking forward to meeting with you, Sherry. Traction for Charles and some of these softwares. Todd's gonna go do employee one-on-ones. Good for you, man.
Woo, good luck.
You gotta go do the work, and that's what we're all gonna do. Buying and reading reality-based leadership is really good. Yeah, Office Vibe. I think if I recall, Office Vibe is pretty inexpensive too. Tracking your ENPS is great. I think Office Vibe will give you, or you can derive from it, an ENPS score. But for those who don't know, NPS is Net Promoter Score, originally for customer service scoring and recommendation. Are your customers, are they willing to recommend you to others? ENPS, the employee version of NPS. Christian Sargent is now listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival. Should have spelled that out a little bit more, but that's not such a bad thing. Not such a bad thing. All right. Thank you guys so much. Up next, our Profit Power Hour, the originally June scheduled episode 7 is July 30th, and we'll be good to go then at the same time and in the same place. You should have the link already for that. So we're looking forward to it. Want to say special thank you to Melanie and to Dave for joining us today. This was an awesome conversation, and I'm really grateful for you guys taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Glad to be here.
Thanks so much. All right. We'll see you later.